Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary with a knife video. Today I've got a blade that is very, very cool, really unique, and has a great deal of appeal to me for a couple of reasons. One, this knife is special because it was a Christmas gift. Okay, so for that reason, there's some sentimental value attached to this knife. But not only that, this is a knife that I've waited for a really long time. And you may say, but Kevin, it hasn't been around that long. But let me tell you what I mean by that. I've known about Reate knives and kind of been watching what they were doing and hearing good things about them from a number of different sources for a while now, probably 3 years or something, 2 years at least. But I will have to admit that none of their models really spoke to me. None of their models really were like, oh, that's so awesome. And for me, and probably for you too, I have a limited budget. And so I can't go spending all kinds of money just to kind of check out a knife I'm mildly interested in. It has to be a knife that I'm like, that is so cool. I really, really want to check that out. And that's the case with this knife. It's one of those blades that when I saw it, I already knew about the company. I was already aware of the quality and the fit and finish and the tolerances that they were able to achieve. And so I'm like, yeah, eventually they're going to come out with something. I just kind of knew it was going to happen that I would be really, really drawn to. And that is the case with this. It's everything about it is just phenomenal. So the things off the hop that really excited me, the handle design, the awesome bag-inspired clip, the M390 steel, the sort of modified clip point. I guess technically this would be a clip point, but it has this harpoon blade shape. The two finishes on the blade. All of these things just come together so that I'm like, yes, that is the Reate knife that I really need to get my hands on. And so I'm really, really fortunate. And of course, I got to give credit to my family for making this my Christmas gift this year. What an awesome gift. Okay. Not too many people, I would not recommend other people buy this knife as a gift because of the price point. Okay. But for a guy like me who's a collector, who's into knives, it was pretty obvious. It was a fairly obvious choice. Okay. So what are the specifics that I like about this knife? There are some specifics, by the way, that are not ideal, but the whole package overall, I really, really like. Okay, so that's sort of my first impression / introduction to this knife. That's how I came to want it and what I initially liked about it. So now we can go on and talk about some of the specifics, and some of those specifics, we will complain about just a little bit. Nothing, obviously, that totally puts me off. Overall, this is going to be a favorable review, and I don't think I've heard anybody talk about this knife and not be fairly positive about it. All right, so size and weight on this, it's 8.5 inches. So that's right about where I like to have my EDC blades. You guys know I do like some larger knives, and I carry some larger knives, but 8.5 inches is more than sufficient. The blade is 3 and not quite 5/8. Okay, so it's just a little more than 3.5 inches, sort of like 9/16. Okay, so it's kind of right there. Handle length is 4 and 15/16. So you can see that it's nice when they land on those nice round numbers, but this one doesn't. So you've got, as I said, 3 and 9/16, 4 and 15/16 handle. And overall, again, 8.5 inches. Now, all of that stuff comes together to combine for a total of 5.9 ounces. Now, 5.9 ounces is a little heavy for a 3.5 inch blade, 8.5 inch knife. But when you consider the materials that are used and you give them some points, okay, for at least trying, they have milled out the inside of the show side here. Lock side, obviously not. But when you consider, this titanium backspacer is going to add quite a bit of weight. Just the fact that it's very solid pieces of titanium. Okay, so although it's a little heavy, I can understand that weight, and I'm certainly not going to complain about it. Okay, the other thing that we ought to point out is that there is this sort of expectation, and I think it's kind of a frustrating one, but you'll often hear guys say this feels like quality. What they mean is it's heavy. Okay, so there's sort of this this association between weight and quality in the knife world that I don't think is fair or accurate, but it's there. Okay, so there is that element when you're making a high-end knife and you're going to be asking a fairly substantial number of dollars for it. There is this pressure to make it a little heavier than maybe it needs to be, because you're going to get some guys who, if they get it in hand and it's not as heavy as they think it should be, they're going to be like, well, it kind of feels cheap. Okay. I feel like if you get a knife, if you could make this knife for 5 ounces, you would have done, that would be impressive engineering. Okay. So it would, yeah, it would add value, not take it away, but that's okay. Let's get back to what we're talking about, which is the details. So I've given you everything: 8.5 inches, 5.9 ounces. Let me do a couple of quick comparisons. I do have my code 4 here. Now guys, I'm not comparing these knives for, as if someone who's buying this might want this one or vice versa. I'm comparing them because the code 4 is a really popular knife, widely distributed, so you're probably familiar with the size, okay? So that gives you an idea of how that compares to a fairly popular knife. More along the lines of an appropriate comparison would be the Liang Ma designed Remedy. Now this is from Liang Ma Designs, okay, and it's marketed by them, but this is actually built by Reate Knives, and again, it is phenomenal in terms of, construction and functionality. It's just excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, so those two knives, now these two are closer in price point, they're closer in construction, and someone who's into higher end stuff would maybe be comparing these two. And we may do a comparison down the road, but again, remember that although they're both constructed by Reate Knives, this one is designed and marketed by Liang Ma Designs. This one is designed and marketed by Reate Knives. Okay, but there's the comparison for you. They're very, very close. There's maybe a teeny bit more cutting edge on the Remedy. Both of these flip extremely well, and I will say, if there's one thing that Reate seems to have figured out, it's how to get detent right. Okay, and that's really what detent needs to be. Okay, when we talk about detent on knives, it's not about being stronger or weaker, it's about being right. Okay, and what I mean by that is it has to engage enough that you can build up a little bit of pressure. It has to retain the blade, and it has to feel right. It has to feel like there's a bit of a pop there. Okay, some knives go, I think they're chasing that pop, but they go, and what I mean by when the detent releases, it's like bang. Okay, a lot of companies seem to chase that, and they can't figure out how to, they say, well, we want it to flip easily and be comfortable for people, so we weaken the detent, and then they say, but we want it to flip out good, so we strengthen the detent, and it's like they kind of go back and forth. And this knife, and from everything that I've heard about Reate knives in general, they just, instead of kind of chasing that, they just do it right. Okay, they just nail it, and they really, really have. The detent is awesome. So where I know I'm comparing, and the reason I got into that whole discussion, I know it's not lockup and deployment time, but these two knives, one of the things they have in common is the detent is just done right. Okay, it's just perfect. One more comparison, and this one's more for interest. Got this one in not that long ago. This is the CRKT Hijinks. Not a lot of people own these. There are only 500 of them out there, but you might be familiar with it. And I just thought, for a very quick comparison, by the way, this knife weighs quite a bit more. Okay, so you can see what I mean when I'm saying I'm not going to complain about the weight on this. When a knife of this size, which is quite a bit smaller, can be quite a bit heavier, then you go, yeah, okay, for a titanium frame lock, 5.9 ounces is not that bad. So those are just some quick comparisons for you. And as I said, not all of them are comparisons in the sense that if you're thinking of buying this, you might want something else. Probably if you're thinking of buying this, you want to look at some custom knife factory knives, some other Reate knives like the Horizon, I hate the District 9, honestly, I don't like it at all, but the Horizons aren't bad, the Valkyrie, those kind of blades, they may compare to this. There are a number of other mid-techs you might want to look at, although these come in considerably lower than most mid-techs. Even some CRK, Chris Reeve knives. You know, does this compare to a Sabenza? Yes and no. It's quite a different animal, okay, so it's hard to really compare them. But I'm going to have a whole video that's called It's a Sabenza to Me, okay, so look for that in the next couple of weeks, where I talk about the fact that there are lots of knives that may be just perfect for you, okay, and people talk about the Sabenza being the most perfect knife. Well, it may not be the most perfect for you. There could be lots of knives that are a Sabenza to you. All right, so let's come back to this knife and keep up with our discussion. Moving into the blade, all right, this blade is one of the major factors that drew me to this knife, and let's go ahead and zoom in at this point so you can really take a close look at the stuff I'm talking about. I will probably stay zoomed in to work through lockup and the handle as well. What I will do kind of at the end to show you flipping and stuff like that is zoom back out. Because obviously it's going to be hard to show you the knife in hand and stuff like that when we're really zoomed in, but I will be able to show you some cool details. So let's do that now. All right, and there's some good details of my nostrils. All right, so there's that very, very nicely ground M390 blade. You can see the clip point, flat grind. It does have nice, good edge geometry. Okay, it's thin, it slices well. I love one of the things that I really, really like about this is the stone wash on the flats, and you can probably at this close, you can see it's stone washed here and here, but then these grinds are a very, very nice grinder satin. And it really is, when I say very nice, it's absolutely beautiful, and I hope you can catch that now. You do have these blade stops here, and essentially these are external blade stops, okay? So this blade, M390 steel, nice thin edge geometry. It's kind of cool how this blade becomes a very nice marriage between a very thin, sharp point and a strong blade. Often you sort of have to trade those off, but you can see this does have a very acute point, but if I turn it this way, there is quite a bit of material that's carried all the way out to the edge of the blade here. A bit of a fingerprint magnet, so if you're seeing a lot of fingerprints on here, forgive me for that. I'm trying to keep them off as we go, but I'm not going to perfectly succeed with that. So that's the blade. Very, very functional blade, very tough blade. Great, you know, if you're looking at a knife in this price point and because of that you say, hey, this is going to be the biggest and best, the greatest knife that I will ever own. It really has to be able to do everything because I'm buying this and it's going to be in my pocket till I retire. I think this blade will serve you well. There's not going to be anything that you go, oh man, I wish I could do this, I wish I could do that. It's a very nice general purpose, general utility blade, and it can flex into a lot of different roles, okay? So now let me say this, I probably wouldn't recommend this knife as your one and only knife forever. There are other knives, if you really want a high-end do everything knife, there are other knives that I would recommend for that. And you can probably go through my videos and find some of those. One last comment here, and that is on this choil. Your finger does fit in here, so we'll talk about this for ergonomics, but it's really well done where the plunge grind is finished properly, okay? And what I mean by that is on a lot of knives, you guys are familiar with this, the plunge grind interferes with the sharpened edge here, okay? That's one last point I want to make. And so, yeah, sharpening this is quite simple. One last point I do want to make. This came passably sharp. That is, it would cut stuff, but it wasn't the razor fine, hair popping sharp that I like my blades to be at. So I did touch this up just with a fine stone. I didn't go to the coarse stone. I went directly to the fine stone on my sharp maker and then stropped it out, and now it is hair popping sharp, which is what I like to, where I like to keep my blades, okay? But it didn't come that way, and let me just say my Remedy did not come that way either. So it may be that if you buy a Reate, maybe be prepared to sharpen it up yourself a little bit, or at least hone it out to get that very fine edge that you're looking for, or that some of us are. All right, so that's the blade. I really like this blade. I like the look of it. I like the function of it. I like the grind lines, the edge geometry. Everything on this is really, really well done. Even the two-tone sort of color combination there is really, really cool. Lockup and deployment. It is, of course, a titanium frame lock. If I turn it this way, you should probably be able to see there is a lock bar insert here. Okay, it does release very well. So this is a comfortable knife. If you're like me and you're going to flip this thousands and thousands of times, you want a lock bar that you can release without, you know, having to get a pry bar in there or something. And this is very well done. I will say you can see the relief cut here. And if I hold this right, I think you should be able to see it. The relief cut is deeper in the back, and it's kind of got this little wall at the front. So it's like a hollowed out cut, which is a really great way of combining, okay, strength, because this extra bit adds stability while getting it comfortable enough to release. There's also this very little cutout here. Let's see, I gotta catch the light right there. You go. So you can see the cutout here for your finger, so you can get a hold of this pretty easily. All right, now I've got to tell you the action on this is amazing. Very, very, very smooth. It just feels like silk. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one, ceramic detent ball. Ceramic detent ball just works. And I commented on this earlier, but this is a knife where, sorry, I'm getting it out of focus, I know, guys. There we go. This is a knife where the detent is right. That's all you can say about it. It's not the stiffest, hardest detent you've ever felt. It's certainly not the weakest. It's just right where it needs to be so that the knife flips really, really effectively every time. No matter who you give it to, no matter what position your hand is in, it's just going to deploy. Okay. It is possible, like any frame lock, that you can squeeze this lock bar. Now I'm pushing pretty hard. I think I can still deploy the knife. Okay. And you can see I can, and I am putting pressure on the lock bar, but I judge the detent by getting my fingers mostly off that lock bar and flipping, and you can see it's just really, really well done, guys. So we have the ceramic detent ball, ceramic bearing pivot system. Okay, so once again, that's making this even smoother. Let me just demonstrate for you. Just give that a little shake, and you can see it closes nicely. The other part of that is the ceramic detent ball is going to slide a little smoother, there you go, on the steel interfaces, okay? So in terms of the action of this knife, it's fast, it's smooth, and even though it's fast, here's what I've got to say about this. What you really want to do with a knife like this is don't go super fast all the time. Sometimes you just want to take it slowly so you can appreciate just how smooth, just how clean that really is. Okay, so lockup and deployment, very good. Nice early lockup here. It does have, of course, the insert, and I like how they hide it. So here, all you see is titanium. Same idea that they did with the Remedy and other of their models. They kind of hide the lock bar insert behind. The front is titanium. You do have this screw, which kind of gives it away, but that's okay. And then, of course, it does extend behind. Now this, I don't know if you'll be able to see on camera. Maybe if I close the knife, you can see it. Right in here, though, there is a piece of there's a piece of steel that extends from the lock bar insert behind the frame to keep you from overextending that lock bar. Okay. So all the things we like to see. Very smooth, very fast, just really, really well done in terms of lockup and deployment. All right, and of course it is titanium frame lock that's comfortable to use, which, you know, sometimes not every titanium frame lock is comfortable, you know. So that's a win. let's move on to the handle. And I'm going to stay zoomed in for a minute to show you the features, and then maybe I'll zoom out to show you it in hand and talk about that stuff a little. So you can see the very, very nice. I almost feel like this should be the show side, guys. I think this side kind of looks a lot prettier than the other side. You've got that ceramic ball in the pocket clip inspired by Todd Begg. These nice holes kind of match it. They tie everything together. Very decorative pivot here with the anodized screws. Looks really, really sharp. Titanium backspacer with sort of a satin finish on it and these blue anodized holes. And you can see that the sides, and let's see if I can show you this. Probably right there. Hopefully you can see the blue inside of there. If not, you're going to have to take my word for it. It is blue inside. So really, really nice looking. Lots of little touches here and there on the blade, on the handle, that are really well done. There are these grooves milled into the titanium, okay, and they're thicker. Remember I talked about the grooves on the Remedy, and the grooves on the Remedy are finer, and they just add a really nice texture. These you can feel a little more, okay, and they are adding more. They're adding grip. You can really, I don't know if you'll be able to hear this, but that's my fingernail sliding over those grooves. They're a little more substantial than what you have on the Remedy, but they are finer than a number of other Reate knives. So sort of this middle ground. Very, very comfortable though. You can see how this is beveled with a rounded corner, and at the front it transitions. So this is just a flat angle. It's just cut this way. Notice how it does tie in really well with what's happening at the blade. But then back here, it's actually round. So back here, it's more of a beveled finish. Here, it's an angle, okay? The angle is down here on the bottom too. These are not rounded, these cutouts here. They're just kind of squared off as well. Everything though is nicely, contoured all the way around the edges. So there's no square edges. There are no sharp edges that are interfering with your grip or creating any kind of hot spots. And so what I've got to say about this handle, while we're still zoomed in, is I think this handle is a great combination of function and form. And that's one of the things we look for, okay? In a knife like this, it needs to do more than function, okay? It has to function flawlessly, but it also has to look phenomenal doing it, okay? So let's back out just a little more. There we go. And I'll talk about this in hand. Very, very comfortable. I do like the option. It almost, I don't know. If you were to ask me and say, Kevin, do you insist that every knife you have has a finger choil? I would say no. However, it just seems like a lot of my knives do have finger choils, and I really like that feature. Okay, so it's sort of an accident, or maybe it's like a subconscious preference that I don't really mentally think about, but I just tend to like it. But yeah, it does have this option to choke up. The jimping it's kind of grippy. It's grippier than a jimping where, I wouldn't say it does nothing. It definitely does something, but it's not super, super grabby, okay? Very, very comfortable in pretty well any grip. The only one, the draw cut, if you're gonna, now in an upward draw cut, let's say you've reached into a box and you're gonna cut back toward yourself, quite comfortable in this grip. But the other way, you've reached out and you've stabbed into something, you're gonna pull toward yourself, this is not all that comfortable because you can see how the finger choil here jams into the fat of my hand. But otherwise, reverse grip, saber grip, hammer grip are all very, very good, okay? So in terms of ergonomics, there's no issue at all. Pocketability is great, okay? Lots of guys have talked about the fact, and I have to admit that it's true, even though the knife geek in me loves to see a real milled titanium clip. I do love it. Gorgeous, right? It just looks really, really cool. But if I'm totally honest with you, I will say milled titanium clips often don't work well. Spring clips are usually better, okay? However, this knife represents a major exception to that. It is perfect. It goes in and out of pocket just right. It retains in pocket exactly the way you want it to. I guess the only thing is if you really insist on a deep carry clip, this isn't one, right? But otherwise, ideal. The other, I guess, problem we could point to with this is to say that, hey, there's only one option. This carries right side tip up only. Now for me, that's perfect, okay? I will say I really love the look of this knife, and I do think that putting the option over here for left side carry would damage the aesthetics of the knife. It would not look as nice. It wouldn't ruin it, and I don't think I'd be like, ah, throw this knife away, it's no good. It just would not, the flow would not be as nice if you set this up to be also left side carry. Let me say this other thing in terms of the stop pins. I've got to point out here that the stop pins, okay, are external. They hit the titanium here, and they hit the titanium here. And where that happens over and over again, so see how right here, here's the stop pin, it's run into the frame of the knife here on this side and here on that side. They do leave a very light mark. It's not the end of the world. I'm going to guess that over time that mark is going to become greater and greater as, you know, more impacts happen, okay? But yeah, I'm not going to complain about it. I've flipped this knife dozens upon dozens upon dozens of times. Not had any issue, okay? I'll show you there now. You probably can't see it, but there are two very, very thin, light wear marks where these stop pins impact the handle when you open it, okay? Could they have done something? You know, I think you've probably seen before, Microtech will often put a little stainless steel insert right there, which I think is brilliant. But I'm not going to say because of that, you know, we throw this knife away and we hate it now. I have no problem with that. But just know that it is going to leave a very light little mark there from opening and closing the knife, both where the stop pins impact here and down here. All right. Let's see. We've talked about pretty well everything on the handle. Oh, except this lanyard hole. I don't use a lanyard, but I've got to say, if you're going to put a lanyard hole, this is the way to do it. This looks really, really nice. Okay. Now, yes, it means that the titanium backspacer has to be a little thicker. Therefore, you are adding a little bit of weight, but that's fine. I'm totally, you know, that means if you kind of look at this, yeah, now you know you've got this much titanium back here, right? So yeah, you're adding a little bit of weight, but that's okay. I'm totally happy with, I would prefer that extra weight and this very, very well done lanyard hole than less weight and a less well done lanyard hole. Okay, so there you go. That pretty much covers everything that I think we should cover on this knife. We have been here for a little while, so thanks for bearing with me, guys. Overall, this is a phenomenal knife, okay? Every bit of what you're paying for this is totally justifiable in a knife of this, with this level of quality, with this level of fit and finish, with this steel, the performance out of this is phenomenal, okay? And you know, you're at $375 for these right now, brand new, I think. A brand new Sabenza is $425. I would take this over a Sabenza pretty well any day of the week. All right, I mean, I love the Sabenza. It's a great knife. I've had a couple of them. I totally love them, but I do like this better. Okay, there's just more features on this. It's, you know, there's a little more refinement on this. Just there you go. Now, don't kill me over the Sabenza comment, guys. Okay, it's a great knife, but for $375 for $50 less, you're getting a lot of knife. Okay, there you go. We'll talk to you soon. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'd love to hear your comments below, especially if you guys have other Reate knives. You know, I've got these two, and my experience has been extremely good. And I've done a lot of reading and research. I've never heard people saying, hey, these knives have this or that issue. They just seem to do a great job, and I'm really kind of excited to see what these guys are going to do in the future. By the way, thinking of the future, I should have a video coming out shortly, most anticipated for 2016. There are a bunch of knives that I'm really like, hey, this is going to be awesome. So looking forward to that. and we will talk to you soon. This is probably one of my longest videos ever, so thanks for sticking with it. Talk to you later.